everyone. Welcome to Hope and Healing Chats, where we discuss everything dealing with sex addiction and partner betrayal trauma. Our goal is that these conversations assist you in your healing journey while helping you to restore hope. My name is Monifa Ellis-Addie. I'll be your host. I am a CSAT and a betrayed partner specialist. I work at Banyan Therapy Group for the past 7 years, working with individuals and couples dealing with sex addiction and partner betrayal trauma issues. You might already hear it, but my voice is definitely a little scratchy. I'm under the weather, but we're going to push right through and talk about today's topic, which is empathy. But first, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. To help us break down the topic of empathy, our guest today is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a CSAT, the founder and clinical director of Pathway Therapy Center in the East Bay area of California. He is also the director of intensives at Banyan Therapy Group since 2018, where he organizes and facilitates programs to provide a higher level of care for addicts and partners, including their Foundations of Recovery Intensive, a 6-week intensive outpatient program, and the Empathy and Relationship Healing Intensive, which we're going to get to more detail later. He also began working in the field of sex addiction treatment in 2013 at the Novus Mindful Life Institute in Long Beach. He co-authored the Foundations of Recovery workbook with Dan Drake. Today we have Eric Anderson. Thanks for coming, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Monifa. It's good to see you. Looking forward to chatting.
Yes. So as you know, the topic today is empathy. And we know this is something we get into constantly in relational healing. It's like the foundation of relational healing. But first, I wanted to talk about what is empathy? Why? What is
So good question. I'll just say before we jump in and keep the conversation going, I apologize to all your listeners for my voice. I'm a little raspy today. I have 3 kids at home that feel like we constantly having colds go around. So thanks everyone for bearing with me on that. No, it's a great question. What is empathy, especially in light of I know the topic you guys discuss on this podcast is relationships healing, couples coming back from betrayal, and it's exactly what the intensive we have on this topic coming up is on. So I think of empathy essentially as being able to relate to feel what someone else is feeling. In the context of relational healing for an addict or a partner who has betrayed their spouse or partner, to be able to empathize with, to feel what their partner is feeling. Of course, there's a lot of barriers in the way of that, and there's a lot of challenges, which is why we'll workshop with guys on that. But yeah, my simple answer is feeling and experiencing what someone else is feeling while also being able to not get overwhelmed.
How do we differentiate that from sympathy?
I think of sympathy as my feelings that come up. So if you're going through something and really feeling shame or hurt or angry, upset with me, I might feel bad for you. I would say that's that's me feeling bad. That's my emotions. That's all my stuff. Versus empathy is. How would I think of an example of this? So, the topic we go into. So, if you're a betrayed spouse and I'm trying to empathize with you, I'm putting myself in your shoes. I'm understanding what would it be like for me if I was walking in Monifa's place? What's the thing she's going through? What's the fear she has? How might I feel if that happened to me? How might I feel if I was in that? And then in trying to demonstrate that empathy, as I'm trying to connect with you with that, I'm gauging off of I'm gauging off of you. Am I getting this right? Am I truly understanding? Is this how you feel? Here's how I might feel. Here's what I imagine this would be like. I would say when you're in that trying to attune to someone else, you're in the realm of empathy.
So if we're looking at you broke your leg, sympathy, I feel bad that you broke your leg. Empathy,
bummer, man, you broke your leg. That's really tough. It's hard for me to look at you in all that pain. I feel really bad. I almost get overwhelmed in my sympathy. That sympathy might want to push me away from that.
Yeah, but if it's empathy, it's man, what is it like for you to have this broken leg?
It's man, this is so tough. This is assuming they're after the crisis phase and they're stabilized and they're dealing with now. Okay, what's the impact of this injury going to be? man, this must be really rough. Like, how long are you going to be out for? Like, what's the recovery
Mhm.
like? You're not going to be able to exercise the way you want. You're not going to be able to, go on walks where you used to. How is this going to shift around your life? Like, that must, and like, like with physical injuries, I've talked to people where like they're true and genuine athletes and they find identity in that. And now they're questioning like, who am I
Yeah.
if I'm not able to do these things? And there's a real loss of self with that. Being able to connect on all those little nuances and deeper levels, I would say, is empathy. Some people are really naturally good at that. Some people naturally, or it doesn't come natural to, and they'll really struggle with it. So what we do is we help teach the people we work with how to connect in that way.
I like using it in terms like that, like something like a physical injury. I feel like it's more
Mm-hmm.
tangible for people. They
Yeah,
can relate to that easier.
yeah.
Um, so you heard me mention this as like the foundation of
Mm-hmm.
relational healing. Um, why is that? Why do we come back to empathy so often in this
Yeah.
treatment when we're working with couples?
Well, empathy, when it's done well and demonstrated, provides a sense of safety. Well, I see partners that I work with have this big, almost sigh of relief when it's not like, yes, you get it. Like,
Mhm.
that's it. That's the thing. Like when, uh, I mean, I see it when I do it as a therapist, but it's even better if, an addict spouse, someone who has caused that hurt, if they're able to get it and that light bulb goes off, I see this big sigh of relief because I think it for partners can generate a sense of safety that like the hurt
Mhm.
that I'm going through is not lost on you. The when I'm explaining my pain and my feelings, it's that sense that you get it.
Yeah, almost that sense of also not feeling alone.
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
just not in this. Yeah.
Well, and then if I know that you get it and I'm not alone in that, I feel safer to keep traveling this journey with you. I feel like, well, maybe this
Mhm.
person, I can continue to be partners with this person because they do see me. They are attuned to me. They're not just on their own path, their own trajectory, and I'm just kind of an accessory to them over here. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I'm with them again.
And the thing with that is, as we know, betrayed partners are like higher on the
Hmm.
empathy spectrum for looking at the whole thing. And then sex addicts naturally going to be on the lower end of the empathy spectrum naturally.
Hmm.
Many times betrayed partners always ask me, well, because they're so empathetic, they don't really understand how someone can be taught empathy. They're like,
Hmm.
can my sex addict partner actually learn empathy?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the one thing I'd amend to that is I wouldn't say the the attunement towards their feelings. So if
Mm,
addicts are numb to that sense of feelings, they're not necessarily going to be attuned to what they're feeling, let alone what their partner's feeling. Of course, they're going to struggle with empathy. Now, a
mm,
partner who is having a very strong sense of feelings due to that like relationship rupture, they're in very strong emotion um because of all sorts of things, triggers, the impact of what's happened. There's a very heightened sense of emotions. I would just distinguish that a little bit from empathy. That doesn't
mm,
necessarily mean that, because I would say is empathy is is the if it's the ability to connect with what someone else is feeling, then if someone's really overwhelmed with themselves, they might actually struggle with that. But
yeah.
it's that what they're really needing is, because they're so overwhelmed with their feelings, for someone to actually attune to them. So I'm sorry, the original question, like why is it addicts are struggling with that?
No, no. So the question is,
Yeah.
Blackstone's partners want to know, is it possible? Like, can they learn? Is that something that someone can learn? Or is it
It
something natural?
is, well, it is something people can learn. I would say people are going to have different capacities for it. Um,
Mm,
so I'd say, so I think of people I know who I would say are a bit more left brained in just the way that they think, the way that they approach the world, people that are engineers, people that are structure based, like they think in terms of like, how do I get things done, right? And
yeah,
emotions aren't
yeah,
it's not their first language.
yeah,
Let's say it
yeah.
that way. That person can learn the steps of empathy and go through the process is that person ever going to, I'll say it this way with my guys, is that person ever going to be Mr. Rogers? Is that person ever going to be able to connect with someone on like that deep natural level that someone who is naturally born in that? No, but I think they have the capacity to move down that, uh, move the ball forward in that, let's say it that way. And look, every relationship is different. People are wired differently. Couples are wired differently. What we're looking to help couples with is get that empathy piece dialed in, because oftentimes partners, when they're what they're experiencing, like they're just desperate to have someone feel like they get it, right? And if their spouse has not, they've not felt that from their spouse for a long time, if they can help move the ball forward a little bit more, it's these breaths of fresh air. And I also think there's the journey that the partners might have in recognizing that if what's if their partner doesn't have the capacity for that empathy at that very intense level, especially when people are temperamentally wired differently, that may not be the best person to look for that from. And that can be hard. There can be a lot of grief around that in a relationship, and that can bring some tough decisions at times. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, that was still answered it.
Yeah.
But it's like good segue because you start talking about like what that looks like, what someone's having that capacity, what that looks like to learn empathy. So that brings us to your intensive.
Yeah.
Because you have an empathy intensive where you're literally doing exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So could you like walk us through that? Like what would an empathy intensive look like?
Yeah. So the first thing that we usually will discuss is people often think, all right, we're jumping right into like what are communication skills and teaching people about empathy and how it works. Actually, the first thing we do is we help the clients come in. We don't start with looking at their partners. We start with them looking at themselves. What are their fears? What are their triggers? Because they need to recognize first thing we need to do is identify what their obstacles are that are getting in the way of them establishing empathy. Because especially if someone's coming to the intensives we're doing, they want to be able to do this. They want to be able to connect, and they know there's some deficit, something like they're not doing wrong. First thing is identifying what's getting in the way. And oftentimes it can be, for addicts, their own sense of shame, their own hurts, their own stories that they're projecting on what's happening. That may or may not be true. It doesn't matter. If they're going to be able to connect and attune to what their partners are going through, they're going to need to be, I'll say this to addicts sometimes, like they're going to need to be able to set aside what their perception of a situation is, not to discount it. It doesn't mean it's wrong. Yeah. It just means that like I can set that aside and hold space for what my partner might be experiencing, whether I see it that same way, whether I agree with it that same way. Like, let me just attune to the emotions behind it, right? So we're helping them identify what are my feelings, what's the things I might have very strong feelings about, so I can set that aside. And then we start getting into some very practical skills and tools. Emotion recognition. How can I recognize what my partner's feeling? What signs might she be giving me? And we look at stuff around, like we really break it down to the nuances. So body language, what's the look on their face say? What might be the stories that I'm making up about that? Okay, let's set those aside. What's the words that they're saying, but not just the words they're saying? What's the tone? What's the feelings behind this? And then the whole time it's we're helping them filter out what are all their narratives about what's happening that are coming up. I've told the story before, but I've had a couple that I worked with, and this person was, we're cleaning up after disclosure, and whenever the partner would explain her hurt and her pain, this the addict, the husband would he would collapse and he'd start crying. And at first, the treatment team that was working with them really had this reaction, like, man, he gets it, like he's feeling it, he's understanding the pain. And you could see, like, she just started seething. She was so mad. She was mad. She would let him have it. And you know, he kept going to, like, you're right, like, I'm so awful. I just kept messing up. Like, I can't believe I hurt you this bad. I can't believe how bad it was, right? And at first it can kind of look like empathy, but that wasn't empathy, because it was all about him, how bad he was. Whenever she was trying to explain, here's her hurt, here's what this has done to me, here's the questions I have now, here's the doubts I have about myself, all she would get back is, how bad of a person her spouse was. And she's like, I don't want you to feel bad about yourself. I mean, it's fine, but like that was neither here nor there to her. She was wanting to hear like that he got and understood what her experience was. So we had to do this. Might sound untherapeutic, but it was like, stop crying, stop, like you need to hold that in right now, set that aside, and just hear what the experience is. That doesn't mean you need to agree with it. Doesn't even mean you need to like say that like that's how you're experiencing as well. But like that would be really hard. I might be doubting that myself too. My fears, the future, all that. And so all that to say, we'll help the clients recognize what signals their partners might be giving them that will help them be able to tune to that. We go through some communication skills. Here's some tools, here's some scripts, here's some ways to be able to go about that. It can be robotic and clunky at first, but as you start getting some practice with it, it really becomes a new way of thinking, a new way of relating to someone. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say the most effective part of what we do, we collect some questionnaires and surveys from partners that really explain some of what their feelings are, and we use that in a role play that we'll do with them. And the idea is we want to really dial up all the pain, all the shame, all the obstacles that would get in the way of what the addict is experiencing, that would get in the way of the addict experiencing empathy, and work through it. We'll role play with them in real time, and we'll workshop with them. Like if you're in a conflict and your partner is, say it's heated, say it's really like we're in a fight and it's a bad one. Like this is where it feels like we're right back at day one. And that's, we put all the tools and skills together to practice helping them feel grounded, feel secure, to be able to connect with, provide containment, provide support for their partner. Sometimes we do it badly, but as time goes on, they start to get it dialed in more. And it's not because like it's absent of any triggers. We want those triggers there to be able to learn to tolerate those. So it's a little bit of everything. It's them identifying their obstacles, learning some very practical communication skills, emotion recognition skills, and then we practice and we role play a lot of that.
Which is cool. I like the arc. So they start with themselves, basically, starting inward, and then more on a practical level, just like relating to others, and then more than to an intimate level.
And then it's bringing it all together, intimate level with the partner. Then, because it's one thing to practice empathy when you're talking to a therapist in a room. There's no real threat of like conflict or vulnerability there. It's another thing when you're in the thick of the conflict, when the emotions are high, and the idea is we want to generate that threat sense where the emotions are high, and you can still practice all these tools and skills at that point. And that's we spend, I'd say, the majority of our second day of the intensive working on that.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be the heightened part.
It's fun.
Do you ever find that sometimes with sex addicts that they might avoid empathy? Does that ever come up, or is it just really just a difficulty of getting there?
So yes, I would say they'll avoid empathy, and I think one of the reasons that can often happen is because it's when they feel that empathy so deeply, like how much my partner is in pain or the hurt they're going through. It's overwhelming for me and I can't handle it. Now we need to learn to develop some fortitude, some strength to be able to hold space for that. That's another part of what we work through. But the getting so overwhelmed in their feelings or of the conflict, I'd say getting overwhelmed in their own feelings, feeling really bad about what they did, like the example of the client who's so immersed in his own shame. That would be a case where it'd be avoiding empathy, which also kind of goes in the other piece, which is just conflict avoidance in general. The sense a lot of addicts have when they come in here is I'm particularly like when they're in their addiction and acting out, I have these secret lives, and in addiction, it's keep these separate at all costs, right? Yeah. So the second it feels like these things are starting to come together, it's, oh shit, keep these apart. Like I'll spin a story, I'll throw out a lie, I'll do something, almost a knee-jerk reaction just to push that aside. And that actually does a lot of damage. Now, by the time they get to the empathy intensive, we're usually doing this with guys who are a little bit further along. This certainly wouldn't be something that we're doing for someone who's at like day one of their recovery, or really even the first couple months. But they're a little bit more stable. They've got a sense of sobriety, and ideally have done disclosure. Now we want to start bringing them back together. We want to start leaning into the pain and the conflict. And that means all the things that I was avoiding, now I'm asking you to go right at that. The very pain that you wanted to stave off, that in their own kind of addictive thinking, I thought I was helping my partner by trying to keep this stuff from her. Now we're charging right into it, and we're going into it together, and we're having a sense that we're going to get through this. That's really the message we want to instill. And I get if that's too much. I get if that's overwhelming. I get if we can't get that, but like at the heart of it, we want to rescue relationships, and we want to help people reconnect in these ways. And especially if you're having the doubts, like, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get there. Well, good. Let's lean into that question. Let's put that on the line, and let's discuss those fears, because I see where couples start coming together and really having a sense of empathy for each other. I have those fears too. I desperately want to be with you, but I'm scared because I don't know if this is going to work. Have I already done too much damage? Am I even enough for you? Those are often the fears like some of the addicts at this stage might be coming with. And sometimes that can come out as like, have I just done too much damage? Have I screwed you up so much? It's like, okay, back off that line of thinking and start connecting to like, what are her fears? Am I going to be the same person anymore? What does it say about me that I'm sticking around after all this? Like, can you understand what that's like? Can you understand how hard that must be? Can you hold space in that? Once those things start syncing up, and a meaningful discussion like that can happen, it's see, for a lot of couples, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. So those are the things we're aiming for. Like the big win for us coming away from this intensive is if a couple can have those moments of like, this is what I've been looking for years. This is the breath of fresh air I've wanted. When you came home for that intensive, and it's never perfect, it's never exactly this, but like the ideal, the thing we're striving for is that moment of like, yes, now I feel like you get it.
Yeah. Which, like you said, the thing that we're striving for is when they come home, like they can see, they get some breath of fresh air, some glimpse, something. Lots of times partners will ask me, how long do I know till I know like the empathy is working? Because sometimes they're practicing these scripts and saying the things, but it might feel like robotic on their end receiving it. And then I always say to them, like, well, they're exercising a new muscle, they're practicing, but then, lots of times we want timelines, and we can't give any timelines. But I know it's like, if we had the magic keys, we'd all be rich. But if we're a betrayed partner, what do you tell them to, like, how do they know that this is working? Like, if there's any cues or anything, like how do they know
I think the biggest thing I encourage partners to look for is like, is there a shift in behavior? Is there like, I hear a lot of partners will sometimes just coming away from intensive, or just like, as you're working with a couple and like they're making efforts and they're seeing like, well, that's different. You wouldn't have showed up like that. You wouldn't have tried, like, and it was clunky and it was awkward and I didn't feel like you got it, but like, I feel like you're trying. And that if when a partner feels that, and this is a vulnerable thing to do, like I get this, but it's just let the guard down a little bit, that there's an honest effort that's made. Right. And then if the addict can see that and validate, like, okay, they're giving me an in, they're letting their guard down, that I want to continue to try this more. And I've been using this phrase a lot with couples, like sometimes we're stumbling uphill, like we're trying to get up to the place we want to get to. We don't know how to get there. I'm trying, I'm doing it badly, I'm doing it wrong. Partner's terrified, partner's scared to let their guard down, and they're not sure if Am I going to be made a fool by letting my guard down? Then something happens again, which that's a absolutely a fair question, right? Which why I think the partner's journey is so courageous in being able to say, like, it's worth it to me going into this, knowing I could be hurt again as badly as I was, because we're hoping for something bigger and we're on this journey together. And as we do that, we start feeling more secure with that. So are there efforts made? Are there changes in behavior? Did you try something new? Did you show up in a different way than you were before? And as you struggle with that together, like, some of it will inevitably start to click. Maybe it's not this big breath of fresh air all at once, but it starts coming. It can start to happen in that way.
I guess one more thing to ask is when someone leaves your workshop after
Mhm.
empathy intensive, do they how do they continue working on these things? Is there a material, something for them to refer back to? How do they keep this going?
Yeah. Last time we did this, and then what we'll do each time we do it is we'll usually have a follow up session, with the group. Usually it's a Zoom call, uh, 4 to 6 weeks out. Just kind of reminders, encouragement around all of this. A lot of the people who are in the intensives will either work with or with therapists that are already working with them that have referred them in. So we will connect with them and brief them on the skills and really because with all of the I think recovery empathy is certainly a piece of this. It's a lifelong journey, and so you're continually practicing these
Mm,
skills. I think like maybe there's a tangent, but I think it's actually very applicable. Like at the beginning of recovery, you're so focused on like don't do the thing, don't act out,
mm,
arrest the behavior, right? And then in order to do that, you learn new tools, new skills, new things, new ways to set boundaries, new coping mechanisms, and part of that is new ways of approaching conflict, right? And then as it goes on and you get to these middle and later stages of recovery, you start learning how to apply those same principles in new phases of life. So it starts affecting the way you show up in your relationship, and then you start realizing the deficits that I have, the things that aren't coming so naturally for me. And oftentimes that's where I see for addicts, light bulbs start going off. Is like, oh, this has been the complaint she's had throughout the whole relationship. I can finally see that
mhm.
now. And then like, this is what that is. Here's those things like I haven't been aware of. And then is where it comes to the empathy intensive. They start recognizing some of those things, and then there's a continual journey of practicing those things. And if I mean like if you're exercising a muscle at the gym, you don't just do it. I do it enough so I can lift my target weight, and then okay, fine. Like no, you continue to exercise that as this is a lifelong process. So it's not just I get that breath of fresh air for our relationship, and then all right, cool, check that box. Now I'm done practicing these skills. Now we start building our relationship on that new foundation.
Which is key because you hear lots of times couples will say they want to go back to what it was before, and it's like, oh well, what was
Yeah,
before wasn't working. So that's we have to build something new. So
yeah, yeah. And I totally empathize with the wanting to go back to where it was before, but
yeah,
like with any great story, it's like once you've crossed that threshold and you're out on the adventure, like there's no going back. There's no going back to the way it was before. There could be something beautiful on the other end of that. That's the
hmm
journey of recovery. It's a journey of marriage, of your life. Like I think one of the reasons I love working in this field is I think that is such a beautiful process that couples go through as
yes,
part of it. But for the vast majority of them, it's a reluctant, heroic journey. It's not one that they chose to go on.
oh
But
yeah,
you hear, I mean, we've talked about this. Like you hear from many couples, like we are changed people on the other side of this. I've had to confront things in my life that
hmm
I never would have chose to, and we're better people for it. But it does involve that level of surrender, for both addict and partner. But definitely, I'd say for addict, leading that charge, especially as this place we're talking about empathy, of I need to be a different person and I want to show up differently. And on the very basic level, I need to learn new skills and tools and build new strengths in order to be able to do that.
So if we were to sum it up like an empathy and relational healing, would it be safe to say empathy like allows the capacity for safety and healing to blossom?
Yeah, empathy helps someone feel safe and secure in that relationship.
Yeah,
Which,
and we
which is
can't
why
really go into it about that.
and for partners at often early on, it actually can feel threatening because it feels like, oh, you're seeing this. Well, I don't. Can I let you in
Mm,
on that? Can I believe you're actually seeing that? Because now I'm letting my guard down, and now dare I say, maybe even hopeful that we're getting somewhere, right? And then nope, something's wrong.
yeah.
Like it feels too scary, right? And for the addict in that situation, what we'll coach them on is like that's fine, give them space. Like they're going through their own journey with that too, and if you can be the healing space for that. That's what we're aiming for.
Thank you again, Eric. We will definitely have you back soon at some point.
Thanks, Monifa. It's been of course.
We're both feeling sick together.
I know. Thanks to all your listeners for bearing with us while our raspy voices are getting through this. I do hope this is helpful. And yeah, if anyone's interested in any of our intensives, the empathy intensive or any of the other intensives that we offer, feel free to reach out to me. The next episode, I don't know when this episode is coming out, but the next empathy intensive is coming up Friday and Saturday, the 10th and 11th, at our offices at Studio City. So that might be a little quick, but we have had people interested in more, so we may have more coming up. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you for joining us today, Eric. And if you want to know more about Banyan's Empathy Intensive, the information is below in the description, as well as our information if you want to reach out to us about anything we spoke about today. Thanks again for listening, and remember to embrace your healing journey. Every step forward brings a new hope for tomorrow. See you next time.